Let's understand this good news a bit better. What does it mean effectively for South Africans who are struggling with their debt?
Uh, Ayanda, the consumer need to know that while they have obligations when they enter into credit agreements, that there's an act called the National Credit Act, which provides some protections to them. So it's important that consumers understand, like many over the last year who may have lost their jobs or who have a significant reduction in their income due to the COVID pandemic. Firstly, what we advise consumers is go and speak to your credit provider. Our nature, when we start getting all these calls and SMSs, is to avoid speaking to our credit providers. But many credit providers understand the reality that consumers are going through, and you may be surprised that they may find some way to assist you. So that's the first important thing, that when you have lost your job, like many have over the last year, or when your income have been reduced, you need to contact your credit provider immediately. And I can't overemphasize that. But there are little things. When you speak to the credit provider, that call is recorded. Please write down the reference number. And if they don't offer you a reference number, ask for a reference number, write it down, and keep it in the safe place, because that recording will be deemed as an agreement reached with you on how to deal with the outstanding debt. Second thing is when you speak to the credit provider, there may be some things in your agreement that you may not immediately be aware of because it's some time ago that you've entered into this agreement.
Yeah.
Check whether you have credit life insurance. We're seeing many cases where consumers have credit life insurance, but could not claim against it. And then with assistance, we managed to assist many consumers to get the credit. The credit life insurance is precisely to help people when they're in need.
Right. Howard, if I
The,
can come
the
in there,
third
apologies there, if I can come in quite quickly, what concessions are consumers not entitled to from credit providers, if that makes sense?
Well, you have entered into a legal contract with a credit provider. So the credit provider has certain rights in that contract, and the consumer have certain rights and protections in that contract. Many consumers don't even read these contracts. We're too excited to get the furniture or the TV that we don't read the contract. It's important that you read contracts, that you take your time to do that. And it's also important that you ask the person that you're dealing with at the store who gives you the credit to explain. And another important point is you're able to ask the person in the store to explain in a language of your choice. So those are the first important things. Understand what you're agreeing to. The next thing is that many credit providers have made special arrangements during this time because they understand the difficulty. So you will recall during lockdown 5, many banks and other credit providers have granted people in difficulty a payment holiday. Uh, uh, some credit providers, when you approach them now that we've had the second more limited lockdown in December and January, are still making arrangements with their consumers to schedule to reschedule their obligations. The important thing to understand is that when you discuss with the credit provider about payment holidays and the like, that may mean that the term of your agreement gets extended towards the end. So when you get back on your feet, it would be very useful if you can pay in a little bit more so that you actually reduce your interest components later on.
Yeah.
It's important to understand that interest is calculated in most instances on the daily outstanding balance.
Right. Now, when the Credit Ombudsman says, or the Office of the Credit Ombudsman says that it's now willing to step in and assist consumers that are owing non-bank credit providers, give us a better idea of what that assistance looks like.
So the Credit Ombud is an independent body. It is recognized in terms of the Financial Sector Regulation Act, and it is a body that consumers can come to when they have a dispute. So the process works quickly like this. Normally, you would approach your credit provider, or in some instances, the credit bureau, when there's an adverse listing on your profile. You would give them 20 days, get a reference number from them. If after 20 days you have no response, or you're not happy with the response, you can then approach the Credit Ombud. The Credit Ombud would then investigate your matter and engage with the credit provider or the bureau to address the concerns. To give you a sense, in 2019, I don't have the figures yet for 2020, 57% of the disputes lodged by consumers with us were settled in favor of the consumer. But that means there were 43% of the complaints lodged with us that were not settled in, where we found that the credit provider acted strictly in terms of the legislation. So what we do is we measure your complaint against the credit provider, against the National Credit Act, and make sure that all your rights and obligations as a consumer have been complied with.
Yeah. Very quickly, just in a couple of seconds if you can, why is this assistance only offered to non-bank credit providers? Is there something we're missing?
The banking sector is covered by the Ombud for Banking Services.
Okay.
So if you have a dispute with any one of the big banks, or there's some 40 registered banks in the country, you would approach the Ombud for Banking Services. We have a very good working relationship with them. So if you approach us, we help guide you as to how to approach them.
I see. Thanks so much for helping us clarify some of these matters. Hopefully people will be taking advantage of what I imagine is much needed assistance during COVID-19. Howard Gabriels is the Credit Ombudsman. Thanks very much indeed.